What's up, guys? In this video, I am going to talk a little bit about why I believe that Donald Trump is going to win the 2020 presidential election. I don't know if it's going to be by a landslide, but if I was a betting man, I would bet money that he would win. If somebody had a gun to my head and they said, you need to pick the correct presidential candidate or or you're going to die right now, I would 100% pick Trump. I would go all in on this. And the reason for this is very simple. It has nothing to do with the coronavirus, has nothing to do with the economy, has nothing to do with really anything other than one simple metric, which if you look back for the past, I think 10 presidential elections, this one thing has been the predictor of who wins the actual election itself. Again, like I said, it's not the economy, it's not the issues, right? It's not the issues, it's not their skin color or their gender or anything like that. The one thing that determines whether or not somebody's going to win the presidential election is how charismatic they are. And, regardless of what you think of Trump or Trump versus Biden, I would love to hear somebody's explanation when they say that Biden is more charismatic than Trump. He's not. Biden is a very boring guy. He's very plain. And his social media presence is virtually non-existent. I'm not talking about like his, because obviously he was the vice president. He's got a lot of reach. Everybody knows who he is, but the guy is not. You don't notice him. You don't think about him. He doesn't get really much free publicity from social media. Whereas if you look at Trump, the guy's always on Twitter. He's always tweeting. He's always talking about his opinions. He does all these rallies. He's always on TV. The media is always talking about him, regardless of the fact of whether or not they're saying anything good. Most of the time they're saying bad stuff, but that doesn't really matter because, he's the more charismatic one. You can say all the bad stuff that you want about him. You can try and drag him through the mud. You can try and dig up all these scandals, all these little sound bites of him saying bad things, pictures of him naked. Like, the media is really going all out. Like, everybody's going all out trying to dig up as much dirt on Trump as they can because for whatever reason, I honestly don't even really understand what the reason is. But for whatever reason, they do not want him to win. Or maybe they really do want him to win and they already know all this and they're just pretending like they don't want him to win. So they're doing all of this stuff to make it seem like they don't want him to win, but they're secretly like pushing him to actually win because it's some sort of mind fuck. I don't really think that's the case, to be honest with you. I don't want to give the people who are in power that much credit for being intelligent. I think they're just in possession of a winning system. And the media machine, and that is what they think is going to work, or maybe it's money. I'm not really sure, but regardless of why they're doing it, the fact is that if you look back, right? If you look at who was it? So in 1984, Ronald Reagan beat Walter Mondale. I was 1 year old. I don't really remember this one, but the article says it, so it must be true. Ronald Reagan was an actor before he was president, and he was known for being, as far as I understand, very charismatic guy, very friendly guy. He's always smiling, always kind of in a good mood. In 1998, George Herbert Walker Bush, who was never this is the article, right? Who's never accused of being the most charismatic man in the room, defeated an even less charismatic Michael Dukakis. I have no idea who Michael Dukakis is, but I do know who George, W. Bush or H.W. Bush is. The dude was like a freaking robot, man. Like, never had any sort of emotion. He was head of the CIA, so like he's like the American version of Putin, kind of from what I see. But he beat somebody who was even less charismatic. And it doesn't say this here in the article, but if you look back at Nixon versus Kennedy, I think it was, right? This was, I think, the first election where there were actual like debates on television. And Kennedy was a very good looking guy. He was very charismatic. He knew how to talk to the camera. He had a very commanding presence. And Nixon was a very smart guy. He was very accomplished, very talented guy, but he wasn't charismatic. He was like the straight A student who like nobody talked to, but everybody knew that they got straight A's. And they just kind of left him alone because he was like the smart, weird kid. At least that's all I really know. I wasn't, alive when he was president. 1992, the super charismatic Bill Clinton defeated the more patrician George H.W. Bush. And then Clinton beat Bob Dole in 1996. Bob Dole also being known for being very dry, very boring, like Mr. Monotone. The guy did not have any sort of inflection in his voice at all. Shit is shaking too much. And then George W. Bush beat Al Gore. Al Gore, also known for being like the most boring guy in the world. And again, George W. Bush, not super charismatic, but if you want to compare the two, he was more charismatic than Al Gore. So what we see here is the same metric, the same pattern being repeated based on this one single metric over a span of, according to this, the past, it'll be almost 40 years. So if you, again, like I said, if you just judge it by that one metric, the one single predictor, right? It could be anything. You know, whoever wears blue shirts more wins. I don't know, whatever. Like some seemingly arbitrary metric, even though charisma is not really that arbitrary, but some seemingly arbitrary metric, which seems to be less important than the issues, less important than the economy, less important than current events, whatever wars are going on, the coronavirus pandemic, whatever. Those things seem like they would be more important from a logical standpoint to determine who is actually going to win the election. But again, like I said, it's really just comes down to the charisma. So, and again, 2008, Obama won. Obama was very charismatic, arguably the most charismatic president we've ever had. Dude was super cool. I didn't really pay attention to politics during that time because I didn't live in the United States, but from what little clips that I would see, I was like, oh, this Obama guy, he's pretty cool. You know, he's like, has these like funny jokes at his White House dinner and all these cameos with celebrities. He just seemed like a cool guy, you know? And Trump is not super cool. He's not like, oh yeah, that Trump guy is really cool. He just, he performs well under pressure. And it's very obvious to everybody who even accidentally watches the news or reads headlines from time to time that the guy is completely unfazed by any sort of media tsunami that's trying to crush him, relentlessly trying to crush him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the past 4 years. Basically 5 years, because we have to count that first year leading up to 2016 election. And the dude is basically unfazed, still does whatever he wants, still has all his little like clever jokes, all his little idiosyncrasies where he basically says like, I'm the best, you guys are shit, I'm gonna do whatever I want, you guys are a complete joke, and that's it. What are you gonna do about it? You know? And the guy's completely unfazed, and he just has been able to maintain a consistent charismatic personality. I wouldn't even call it really charismatic, but like a consistently, I don't know, alpha personality. The dude is just basically like straight up alpha. I don't know, the basic definition of it. Does whatever he wants, doesn't give a fuck. Okay, so that is my prediction for who's going to win the 2020 presidential election. What do you guys think about that? Am I right? Am I wrong? Who do you think is going to win? Let me know. Leave me a comment. Peace.